This past week, we celebrated our 100th day of school. And in our first grade, we have a tradition of the first graders dressing up like 100-year-olds. And it's funny to see their interpretations of what 100-year-olds look like. And it's funny to see their interpretation of what 100-year-olds act like. For example, many of them walk sort of bent over and holding their back at a very slow pace. Some of them brought canes or walkers. They even make these inflatable ones now because apparently dressing up like a 100-year-old is a fun thing for kids to do, and it's done more than just at our school. And so they were walking around with these walkers bent over and moving them little by little. And if you ask them what they think they're going to do when they're 100 years old, it ranges from everything that they can do right now to sitting in a chair watching television and playing with their grandkids, who I don't think they realize will be likely in their late 40s and 50s at that time. And so it's a pretty fun day until we got to the end of it, and one of them expressed a great deal of surprise that I was not yet 100 years old. But kids are funny, they make you laugh. But our society in general has a view of aging that I think sometimes affects our Christianity. And we get to a point where we feel like we have the right to coast, not just in terms of our service, which may need to be curtailed due to physical limitations, but also in terms of our spiritual growth. What we see in the Bible that God often used people into their late ages. Caleb said this in Joshua chapter 14, verse 11. I am still as strong today as I was in the day Moses sent me. That was when he was 40. As my strength was then, so my strength is now, for war and for going out and coming in. And Caleb, even at the age of 80, believed that God still had a job for him to do in the promised land, and he was anxious to get it done. Moses was 80 when he appeared before Pharaoh. Anna, whose story we just recently looked at Christmas, who was serving in the temple to the age of 84 before she saw Jesus. And the reality of the Bible is that we are never too old to learn, we're never too old to grow, and we're never too old to serve in some way. Because sometimes, even with limited capacity, we are able to send a note, we are able to pray. And I think until we get to the point where we can't at all, we need to make sure that we are growing in our faith, that we are still serving God, that we are still a vital part of his church, even if we can't be in church all the time. When Abraham died, these are the words that were written. These are all the years of Abraham's life that he lived, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and satisfied with life, and he was gathered to his people. I think all of us would like that to be something that could be said when we die. We might not want to live to be 175, but when we die, we want it to be said that we lived to a good old age, and that the implication being that it wasn't a miserable existence, and that he was satisfied with life. And part of that satisfaction comes from our relationship with God. In fact, I would say the majority of that satisfaction comes from our relationship with God. And that is something that won't just last us into old age, but will last us throughout eternity.